My name is Mia, and this year I have experienced two things, one good, one bad. The good one is my husband Mateo, who passed away in a car accident. The bad one is that the driver of the other car was a spoiled rich kid, and he paid us a lot of money, plus all sorts of insurance claims, which made me a widow. The second thing was that on the day after his death, a woman with a foxy face came to my door with a child in tow. She was Lumi, and the child was Mateo's illegitimate son, whom he had fathered outside of his marriage. According to the law, the child also had the right to inherit, so at least half of the inheritance would go to him. Lumi came to my door with the child when I was dealing with Mateo's funeral affairs. He had passed away suddenly, leaving a lot of mess behind, which needed to be dealt with. I didn't even get a good night's sleep for those 2 days, let alone have a chance to drink a cup of water. When I realized what she was saying, I almost picked up the broom in the corner and threw her out. Are you crazy or just trying to get rich? You can't even make up a story like this. I looked her up and down, and she wasn't young, but her eyes and eyebrows were quite nice, and she could be considered attractive in a rough way. The little boy behind her looked to be around 4 or 5 years old, and he was hiding behind her, looking scared. Lumi came straight to my door with a child, sat down on the sofa, and acted like the hostess of the house. Mateo passed away suddenly, and there are some things he never told you. If he were still alive, he would have probably filed for divorce with you this week. And then I frowned and asked curiously. To be honest, I had never encountered anything like this in my life. I met Mateo through a blind date, and I married him because I thought he was a simple man. I never expected that his simplicity was only on the surface and that he had so many hidden schemes. We had been married for less than 7 years, and he had a woman outside of the marriage and secretly raised a son. I underestimated him. Lumi had a thick face and said boldly, "I have already consulted a lawyer, and the legitimate and illegitimate children have the same right to inherit. He died, and the inheritance he received should be divided equally between us mother and son. Otherwise, I will." Mateo was an only child, and his death was a relief for him. But the problem was his mother, Anya, who cried her eyes out in her room every day. Later, she blamed me and called me a bad luck charm. After I dealt with Lumi's situation, I had to go to Anya's place to handle things. It was driving me crazy thinking about it every day. Lumi's face changed, and she gritted her teeth as she looked at me. "You don't need to play those dirty tricks on me. The law is clear about this, and I will make sure you pay back what belongs to us. Get out," I said calmly. After I dealt with Lumi, I went straight to Anya's house with the car keys. But what I didn't expect was that Lumi was there too, and it seemed like she had expected me to come and was sitting in the living room, looking calm and composed. "Mom, are you senile? How can you let anyone just come in like that?" Anya looked me up and down and snorted through her nose. "Who told you I consider you a stranger? Since Jasper is Mateo's son, he is part of our family. Letting my grandson come in for a while is no big deal." Jasper? That must be the child's name. I knew Anya had never liked me. She had wanted Mateo to marry the girl from the neighboring village, Elise, but it turned out that we ended up together. Especially after I got married and had a daughter, Cleo. She hated us mother and daughter even more and was always finding ways to pressure me to have another child. I underestimated Lumi's means, and she had the audacity to target Anya. "Mom," I said angrily, staring at her. "Mateo is dead and you're senile too, but you can't be that senile to let any woman with a child just come in, can you? They say Mateo had a child with a woman outside." "Mom," I said, looking at her coldly. "Mateo is dead and you're senile too, but you can't. When Mateo and I first got married, I always had his paycheck in my hand. But then he found some excuse to take it back and still paid for the household expenses every month. If I didn't guess wrong, after covering the household expenses, all the remaining money would end up in Lumi's hands." As soon as I said this, Lumi's face changed instantly. The first time I saw her, I just glanced at her briefly, and she was wearing clothes that were not from top luxury brands, but from small, exclusive brands, with coats that cost over 500 yuan each. I smiled. "I remember you coming to my door, saying you wanted to settle the score with me. Let's do that now. I'll go to the bank and check Mateo's payment records." Lumi gritted her teeth and stared at me. "You just said Jasper might not be Mateo's biological son. Now you want me to pay back? I think you're just trying to keep Jasper's share for yourself." I slowly shook my head. "No, I just confirmed that you're the third party, but I didn't say that the child is Mateo's." "You." Lumi's composure finally broke, and she stood up as if she was about to come over and fight with me. "Jasper's share, I want it. It's what my son and I deserve. I was hidden away by him for so many years and suffered so much. This is my compensation fee." Listening to her sob in front of me, I stepped on her without hesitation. Blame yourself for being a slut who crawled up to someone else. After saying that, I turned to look at Anya, who had been brought to the city 2 years ago. By that time, my life with Mateo had already improved, so we spent some money to buy an old building near our home for her. Anya was old, but her eyes had never lost their sharpness. I knew from the first glance that she was too calculating and had an unchangeable meanness. I kindly reminded her, "Mom, Dawn, although Mateo's body has been cremated, if they can find other evidence to prove Mateo's paternity with the child legally, the money is definitely going to be divided among the child. I suddenly don't quite understand why there is such a strange provision in the marriage law where legitimate children and illegitimate children are supposed to have the same inheritance rights. Why? Why can the child of a mistress also legally enjoy these rights? What's even funnier is that if the father has a criminal record, it will affect his legitimate child, but the son of the mistress is not affected at all. I suddenly don't quite understand what the newly revised regulations are meant to protect, the mistress or what. As for my situation, the lawyer gave me the most direct approach. That is, with Mateo's identity documents, hurry up to apply for the procedures and hold all the things that should be obtained in hand. If Lumi really wants to sue me, I will directly sue her and demand the return of marital property. But no matter how you calculate it, it's still a bit awkward. After all, my name and Mateo's name are registered under 2 houses, a car, and these compensation payments. If Lumi really gets half of it, I'll be the one who really loses out. In terms of inheritance rights, the first choice of the law is the wife, the second is the child, the third is the parents, and the fourth is the distant relative relationship. I went to Mateo's identity documents to do the property settlement, but what I never expected was that he had secretly bought a house outside without my knowledge. Looking at the account page showing the 700,000 yuan real estate expenditure, I almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The house was paid in full, a small apartment of only 70 square meters, but it was enough for Lumi and her son to live comfortably. That was the house that Lumi had. It was with our joint property. No wonder he refused my proposal of opening a store and investing in shares without hesitation, and kept persuading me that the current world was unstable and the risk of investing in a physical store was too great. It was not that he see Cleo is now in elementary school, and although the classes are not too busy, she still has to learn some basic reading. Mateo's funeral is scheduled for tomorrow morning, and there is a tradition in our family that the dead must be kept at home for 3 days before being buried. I chose a medium-priced cemetery with a decent environment for him. He was a quiet and reserved person who had few friends, so there were not many people who came to pay their respects. Most of them just said a few meaningless words of comfort. On the other hand, Anya immediately knelt down in front of Mateo's tombstone and began wailing like a ghost. "Child, how could you do this at such a young age? You're not trying to take your mother's life, are you? Without you, how am I supposed to live? I've only had you as a son, holding you in my hand, cherishing you, and raising you all these years. And now, at this age, you're gone. I don't want to live anymore." The flow of people in the cemetery was not very high, and even those who came to pay their respects to the deceased were curiously looking over when they heard Anya's outburst. I stood by silently watching her, then turned to look at Mateo's tombstone, feeling no emotion at all. We have been married for many years, but our relationship was not deep. We are all adults and we keep our own secrets to ourselves and continue to work hard for our family. The only good thing he did was leave me a large inheritance after his death, but unfortunately, there was also a disgusting fly that made me unable to think of him favorably. At this moment, another woman's sobbing voice suddenly sounded. "Mateo, how can you leave me and the child like this?"
Mateo.
I don't know why, but Lumi somehow found her way to the cemetery and grabbed Jasper's hand, kneeling on the ground. "Mateo, I've come with my son to see you. If you have any knowledge in the netherworld, remember to give me a dream and let me see you and tell me." Lumi cried as she spoke, looking like Mateo's rightful wife and acting more like she was saddened to learn of Mateo's unexpected death. On the contrary, I am silent, and she makes me seem even more inhuman. Anya's eyes suddenly looked at me, pointed at me with gnashed teeth, and cursed. "Do you have any conscience? Doesn't it bother you at all that your man is dead?" I was so blind. Why did I choose you to delay my daughter-in-law? Maybe my son has this bad luck. It is you to harm. He is for you to prevent the disaster. You, this life is not good. A lost star. You are everyone. Anya came out of the village with a whole set of swear words and didn't bring the same one for half an hour. I have known this for years. The way she sat on the ground and pointed at my nose and shouted abuse startled Jasper, who immediately hid behind Lumi and was dragged out by her impatiently. "Jasper, remember this man. This is your real father. He's gone, and now it's just us and her in this world." She had said this to Anya, who, sure enough, immediately said, "How are you two orphans and widows going to live now that Mateo is dead? Shouldn't the word orphan and widowed be attached to Cleo and me?" Lumi wiped the tears. "All this can only be blamed on my bad fate. When the child hurt the body, so many years of hard to raise, soon to live a good life, God also specially arranged such a game to play on me. I am all right, but I have wronged my son. Don't worry, Jasper is my own grandson, and I won't leave him alone. You'll get a fair share." Here we go again. Ever since Mateo died, the only thing these two have talked in my ear about is spitting things out. They didn't say enough. My ears are starting to boil. Anya suddenly called my name again. "Mia, don't you have 2 houses in your name? Make room for Rue and Jasper in the bigger house. I have seen the house they are living in now, and it is so shabby that it is not good for the children. Are you all right?" Without thinking, I asked about this moment directly, and I even wanted to see if Anya had cried too much in the past 2 days. Crying which nerved to death? How else could you say something so thoughtless? Clearing my house for my mistress is the worst joke I've heard in over 30 years. Besides, the house Mateo bought Lumi before, but it was well decorated, and it was broken up. And just as well, she reminded me of the house. I turned to look at Lumi, who was still kneeling on the ground. Her face was pale, and there were 2 lines of tears hanging under her eyes, looking delicate and pitiful, and Mateo was so fascinated that she could not even find the north. "Mateo bought you the house you're living in, right? I'll have to get this house back. It's our joint property. Mia, don't push anyone too far." Lumi looked like he didn't expect me to mention it, so suddenly, he just stood up and pointed at my nose. "You robbed me of my wife's property, and now you want the house back. Let me tell you that Mateo bought it for me, and it is registered in my name. No one can take it away from you. Let's give it a try." Lumi had threatened me with going to court, but I ended up taking her to court first. I went to the bank to get his account statement, which found that in these years, Mateo's large and small transfers have never been broken, each time at least 1,000 start, plus the house on Lumi actually spent more than 1 million. There's half my money in there, and Lumi has to spit it out to me intact. And what I didn't expect was that Anya showed up and said the same thing between the words, that you had to have half of her grandson's money. Looking at the unrepentant old lady in front of me, I kindly sat down to calculate an account with her. Are you sure that Lumi will stay with that child for the rest of her life to raise your grandchildren? I looked at Anya coldly, and all I could think about was how hard she had been on me for so many years. There is a saying called 10 years into a woman. Anya had a hard time being a daughter-in-law at the beginning, but when she became an old woman, she slowly regained a little confidence. According to her, she must let me taste the same sins she suffered before. She is old, not a few days to live. Good days have to accompany her first, so as to be the filial piety of those of us who are younger. This from the moment I entered the door, she began to say, said so many years in a row. People are still alive. I see her hard body and bones at least can live for another 10 years. Anya's face changed as she realized what I meant. What are you trying to say? Of course I'm saying that Lumi has been using you to try to take money from me. But when she gets the money, is she really going to spend it all on your precious grandson? She is so young that it will be easy for her to find another man, and then the money will have to be spent on another man, and you must remember that your son paid for it with his life. I said a lot in one breath, and every word was poked at Lihohat's heart. Or did you have a deal with Lumi that she would stay with your precious grandson for the rest of her life without marrying? At last, Anya's face changed. Obviously, she also realizes that what I'm telling him now is true, and it's going to happen. She is so eager to please Lumi, is afraid that Lumi with the child remarry, let their old Wang family blood outside, but if she really bring Jasper over, she does not have the ability to raise and educate, so still have to rely on Lumi. It may be that she has been dealing with her for too long, and now as long as Li Guifan moves her eyes, I know what she is thinking. Mom, I don't want to be harsh, but you know what's right and wrong. If you want to spend that money on someone else, you can do whatever you want. I'm not involved. I sighed sadly and gave Anya a look, making room for her to calm down and think. I knew Anya was domineering and selfish. I knew she was a calculating person who would break a dime into 8 pieces. She stayed in my house all morning before she left. I kept waiting for her to leave, turned and immediately ran to the bedroom to search the closet, and sure enough, a Mateo t-shirt had been taken away. That t-shirt was deliberately placed on the top, but also the most prominent position, as long as I opened a cabinet door can be seen. Anya, don't let me down. I sued Lumi this matter soon down. As a result of the bank's expenses are all there coupled with the house. The court helped me all to collect back, but some special meaning of 1314 and other transfers cannot get back. That night, I snuggled on the sofa, holding the computer until the second half of the night. Finally could not help but laugh out. Now I have 3 houses in my hand, a car, and a messy bank card. The balance has accumulated to 6 million, plus the 300,000 that has just been transferred back to me. I feel I can wake up laughing in my dreams. The life of being a widow and making money. It's wonderful. If I had known Matteo would get so many benefits, I would have expected something to happen to him sooner. I was married to find Matteo restless. He does not sleep in the middle of the night. In some software in the same city page to find those female anchors, one by one to say hello to others, if who returned to him 2 sentences, immediately began to install big money, to give people how much money, how much gifts, coax the girl's heart. It was the closest he'd ever come to cheating, but I caught him and cut it short. At that time, Matteo was kneeling on the ground, repeatedly slapping himself, begging for my forgiveness, and taking out Cleo to say something. Mia, you forgive me. I was confused at that time. For the sake of the child, our 2 lives don't have to continue to live? I'm sure it won't happen again, and if it does, you can do whatever you want of me. At that time, I was already in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, and if I aborted the child rashly, it would be dangerous to my life, not to mention how I could give up the child. So he put up with the nausea to give birth to the child, turn a blind eye to life. I thought I was watching Matteo closely enough that even when he went to the bathroom, I had to take a picture of him, record a video report, reassure me. But even so, he still brought a green hat. My Cleo is only 6 and the baby is 5, so it looks like they hooked up while I was pregnant. I also don't quite understand what Lumi really wanted Matteo. After all, this man is not very long, and sometimes he talks ugly and always loves to make those crude jokes. I pulled away from the memory. The corners of my mouth slowly drew a smile. A few days later, Lumi sued me, too, taking me directly to court and asking me to give her half of the compensation. I looked at her with extraordinary indifference. Do you remember what I said? The court ruled that the connection between your son and Matteo was based on DNA, and now that Matteo is dead, how can you prove that the 2 of them are father and son? Don't be a smartass here. I'm telling you, I already got Matteo's DNA, and we'll have the results this afternoon. Lumi didn't care. Even if I gave you back the money, what would happen? If I win this lawsuit with you, I can at least get more than 3 million yuan from it, which is enough for me to live the rest of my life without worries. I heard her say that, as if I had already seen the rest of her life without working, but rich and rich. That's a beautiful dream. Keep doing it. You. Lumi was angry with me again. She was a mean, dumb bitch. He reached out and pointed at me for a long time, and he couldn't say a word, except the word you. I listened to some impatience, directly patted away her hand. Nothing to roll it. Looking at your face, I feel sick. Why there are always so many disgusting people in the world who do not know. While climbing into the bed of a married man, you still have to find ways to humiliate the original wife and prove your importance. Didn't your parents teach you what is called decency and shame? Lumi glanced down at her phone and smiled confidently again. You don't believe Jasper is Matteo's child, do you? The DNA results are on the way and we go straight to face. When that paternity test came in, All of our attention was on that little file. Although this brown paper bag is not impressive, but the contents of this can be valuable, can be worth $3 million. Anya was the first one to open the files. She has been looking forward to giving birth to a son to continue the incense for so many years. When I just found out that I was pregnant, every day to change the way to send me some terrible Chinese herbs to die, but also a good name for my body. But I knew that these words were all deceitful because he had bought them from a monk who was wandering outside. The purpose is to give birth to a boy. Even if the first pregnant is a girl, after drinking this drug can also change gender. I have to say that being uneducated is really a terrible thing, and Anya is convinced of it. When I gave birth to Cleo, he looked at me with disdain and said, "You wish you had been obedient earlier." It cost me so much money to have a baby and a daughter. I forget what I said at the time, but Anya's words made me shudder, and I wanted to grab the fruit next to her and smash it at her. Later, after Matteo knew about this, we had a big quarrel. When I was the most vulnerable, he not only didn't feel sorry for me, but also listed one charge after another for me. If the baby hadn't been born by then, the two of us would have gotten a divorce. Anya was so happy when she opened the craft paper bag, but after seeing the content on it, the expression became so vicious. She directly came forward without hesitation to loo me a big slap in the face, gnashing her teeth and swearing, "You are really when I am senile. Even this means can make out." Lumi was stunned by the slap and didn't know what was going on, hurriedly to pick up the document on the ground after seeing the content above, but also froze there. How is that possible? Jasper was Matteo's kid, wasn't he? There was a problem with the appraisal report, and we rushed to redo it. Lumi's words grew more anxious, but Anya's eyes grew colder as she looked at her. Because the paternity report says that the match between the two blood samples isn't 99%, it's 1%. Take two random strangers for a DNA test and get a blood sample greater than 1%. You said to me before how much you love Matteo, how hard it is to take care of the child. I have a soft heart for you, want to bring you back. Did not think that you are so shameless. In Matteo's side of the hookup is even if pregnant actually dare to roll with other men? Are you really a fool of our royal family? I stood quietly watching the play, watching this pair of yesterday also intimate mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Today began a variety of hands. Jasper was Matteo's child, but I realized something when Anya came to me that day. I made a conscious effort to put Matteo's clothes on top and cut a hair on them, secretly plucking it from my colleague. Anya doesn't care about Lumi at all. She only cares about Jasper, the grandson she has always wanted. Now, all I did was tweak the paternity report, and it turned them both on their heads, but if it's accurate, it was what I said the other day that shook Anya. Lumi, for so many years, was hidden by Matteo to keep the body delicate and weak, whereas Anya's opponent, a slap, was beaten to the ground. Jasper comes to help, but Anya pushes him out. Jasper hits his forehead on the coffee table and sees blood with a bang. As for what happened next, I don't know. Anyway, Lumi said to Sue, I have never sued. She has no substantive evidence. There is no way to get money from me, and now Anya won't listen to her. I successfully completed all the inheritance procedures of the property, and later I can also live a merry life. Direct, white, rotten, lying, flat, small, rich woman. No longer because of the pressure of overtime to sleep all night long, insomnia, hair loss. Cleo was on my lap, and suddenly, in a small voice, he asked, Mother, did Father not want us? Why hasn't he called in days? Did he miss me? Are there other more obedient children out there? Cleo's voice was so low that I had to listen up to hear what she was saying. My daughter, I knew he had asked me this, which meant that she knew Mateo had been in a car accident. After thinking about it, I chose to have a showdown with Cleo directly and told her about everything. I sighed again. I have been hesitant to tell you this matter, but I didn't want you to blame me, and I didn't want to make you sad. Cleo, who had already guessed the result, threw himself on the table, crying with his shoulders, and began to twitch. Mother, I will be your armor. With me, no one will hurt you again. I exhaled with my eyes closed. Well, Mother knows. Mother will try. Cleo was sweet, but even after the day I had my showdown with her about Mateo, I could feel something change in him, like an invisible thread that had been added out of thin air, framing herself in this area. The rest of the day gradually returned to normal. I didn't tell anyone about the DNA report, and Anya knew too little to understand the strange writing. I didn't say a word, let her look around. Looks like she made some kind of special deal with Lumi. Lumi left the baby with her. Lumi paid for it. Anya paid for it. Anyway, after all this fuss, the marriage is still not settled. Lumi was more of an activist than I had expected, and within 3 months, she had already registered her marriage to another man, seemingly forgetting that she had Jasper as a son. But these things have nothing to do with me. These things are done by a few people, and I have nothing to do with it. Mom, let's go to the fireworks tonight. I heard there will be a fireworks show tonight. Cleo ran over with a big smile on her face. I pinched her face a little helplessly and said, Listen to you. The bright future is already beckoning to me, and this time I will run into it with great strides.